There was a time, not so long ago, when dinner tables weren't overwhelmed by endless choices, and a meal didn't need flashy ingredients or fancy labels to feel like home. The 1970s brought a quiet revolution in kitchens across America, families embracing simple, meatless meals that stretched budgets, nourished bodies, and brought people together. Today, we honor that spirit of resourcefulness and heart, celebrating the humble, hearty dishes that warmed countless homes and still inspire us to cook with care and thrift. Lentil loaf.
Today, I'm going to show you how to make a lentil loaf.
Imagine a warm kitchen on a Sunday afternoon, onions sizzling softly, carrots sweetening the air, and a tangy tomato glaze bubbling atop a golden, crusty loaf. Lentil loaf was the thrifty, meatless answer to the classic meatloaf that filled many American homes in the 1970s. Born of necessity and curiosity, it was perfect for families wanting a hearty, satisfying meal without breaking the bank. Lentils, humble yet packed with protein, gained popularity in the 70s as vegetarians and budget-conscious cooks embraced meatless meals. Their earthy flavor and meaty texture made them a natural substitute for ground beef. Paired with sautéed onions, carrots, and celery, lentils became the base for a dish that felt like a true centerpiece. To prepare, brown lentils are rinsed and simmered until tender but not mushy. They're combined with the sautéed vegetables, breadcrumbs, or crushed crackers for binding, and eggs to hold the mixture together. Seasoned with salt, pepper, garlic, and a splash of Worcestershire or soy sauce for depth, the mixture is shaped into a loaf. A glossy glaze of ketchup or tomato paste, sweetened with brown sugar or molasses, is spread on top, caramelizing into a sticky, flavorful crust during baking. Baked low and slow for about an hour, the lentil loaf emerges golden with a tender, savory interior. It slices neatly, perfect alongside mashed potatoes or steamed greens. Beyond economy and nutrition, lentil loaf evokes a simpler time when meals were made from scratch and the kitchen table was a place of family warmth. This humble dish remains a delicious reminder that comfort often comes from the simplest ingredients. Vegetarian chili. Picture a chilly evening in a 1970s kitchen. Windows fogged, a pot simmering gently, and the rich, smoky aroma of chili filling the air. Now imagine that chili without the meat. That's vegetarian chili, a hearty stew that long before plant-based eating became trendy, was embraced for its thriftiness and bold flavor. This isn't just beans thrown together, it's a celebration of humble pantry staples, transformed by spices and care. Kidney and black beans form a creamy, protein-packed base, bursting with every bite. Tomatoes add acidity and sweetness, while bell peppers and onions lend color and texture. Garlic and chili powder bring warmth, with cumin adding an earthy depth that lingers like a secret. The process begins with soaking dried beans overnight, or using canned beans for convenience, then cooking them tender but intact. Onions and garlic sizzle in a heavy pot, releasing their savory fragrance before bell peppers soften and tomatoes and spices join the mix, thickening the chili and layering flavors. A splash of vegetable broth keeps it moist, melding everything into a rich, velvety sauce. Slow simmering deepens the flavors and fills the kitchen with a comforting aroma, inviting everyone to gather round. This meatless chili stands strong on its own, or pairs beautifully with a golden slice of cornbread, a classic 70s sidekick that soaks up spicy juices and adds buttery sweetness. Leftovers only get better, making it a thrifty choice for busy families or anyone craving a satisfying, fuss-free meal. Though vegetarian chili didn't make headlines in the 70s, it quietly carried the spirit of frugality, flavor, and comfort, reminding us that even without meat, a bowl of beans, spices, and vegetables can fill us with warmth, satisfaction, and a touch of nostalgia. Stuffed bell peppers. Imagine walking into a kitchen filled with the sweet, earthy scent of roasting bell peppers, their skins blistered and tender, and the bubbling sound of cheese melting to a golden crust. Stuffed bell peppers were a colorful, comforting staple on many 1970s dinner tables, simple, affordable, and special enough to feel like a family treat. Before convenience foods took over, these peppers served as natural bowls for a savory filling packed with cooked rice, sautéed onions, and diced tomatoes. Leftover beans or mushrooms often made their way in, adding protein and earthiness without extra cost. To prepare, peppers were hollowed out carefully to keep the shells sturdy yet tender after baking. The filling was seasoned simply: salt, pepper, garlic, and sometimes paprika or herbs like oregano or thyme to give it a little zip. Some cooks mixed in shredded cheese for extra creaminess. The stuffed peppers were placed snugly in a baking dish, often surrounded by tomato sauce or broth to keep them moist. A generous sprinkle of cheddar or mozzarella on top melted into a golden, bubbly crown during the 40-minute bake. The oven softened the peppers and melded the filling into a warm, tender bite. A perfect balance of sweet, savory, and creamy flavors. Stuffed bell peppers exemplified 1970s cooking, affordable, resourceful, and packed with homey flavor. They remind us that simple ingredients, treated with care, can become something truly special. A comforting meal that still satisfies today. Tuna noodle casserole.
I'm showing you how to make tuna casserole.
If there's one dish that perfectly captures the cozy, no-fuss spirit of 1970s home cooking, it's the humble tuna noodle casserole. Though not strictly vegetarian, it's a meatless meal and pantry hero for many families back then. Quick, comforting, and downright satisfying. Picture a casserole bubbling with creamy mushroom sauce, tender noodles, peas, and flaked tuna, topped with a golden, crunchy breadcrumb crust. It's a meal that brings you back to a simpler time when dinner was about comfort and convenience without skimping on flavor. The key ingredients are simple pantry staples: canned tuna, egg noodles, cream of mushroom soup, and frozen peas. The mild, flaky tuna blends seamlessly into the sauce, while egg noodles provide a soft, chewy base soaking up every bit of creamy goodness. Peas add bursts of sweetness and a pop of color, breaking up the rich texture with bright green cheer. Making this casserole starts by cooking the noodles just right, not too soft, not too firm, before mixing them with tuna, peas, and that iconic creamy mushroom soup. Many 70s cooks relied on canned soups for richness and convenience, sometimes stirring in milk or sour cream to lighten or boost creaminess. Once combined, the mixture goes into a baking dish and is topped with buttery breadcrumbs, which toast into a crisp, golden blanket during baking. That crunchy topping contrasts beautifully with the silky noodles beneath, delivering the nostalgic, home-cooked texture so many remember fondly. Baked for 25 to 30 minutes, the casserole emerges bubbling and browned, ready to fill hungry bellies. More than comfort food, it's a symbol of 1970s kitchen ingenuity, a hearty, satisfying classic that endures. Bean and cheese enchiladas. Step back to the 1970s, when Mexican-inspired dishes began finding their way into American kitchens, bringing vibrant flavors that were affordable and comforting. Bean and cheese enchiladas became a beloved meatless meal. Warm corn tortillas rolled around creamy beans and melted cheese, smothered in a rich, tangy red sauce, and baked until bubbling and irresistible. The charm of these enchiladas was their simplicity and thriftiness. Corn tortillas, humble and inexpensive, served as vessels for the filling. Refried beans, pinto or black, cooked down to creamy perfection, offered protein and velvety texture. Shredded cheddar or Monterey Jack cheese added gooey richness that tied everything together. Making them was hands-on and satisfying. Tortillas were warmed just enough to be pliable, then spread with generous dollops of beans and a hearty sprinkle of cheese before being rolled up and placed snugly in a baking dish. The homemade enchilada sauce stole the show. A deep red blend of tomato paste or sauce, chili powder, garlic, and a touch of cumin or oregano simmered gently to develop smoky, slightly spicy depth. Pouring this sauce over the enchiladas kept them moist during baking and infused every bite with warm tang. Topped with more cheese, the dish baked until bubbly and golden, with the cheese browning to perfect crispy edges. Served hot and steamy, perhaps with sour cream or fresh cilantro, these enchiladas were a crowd pleaser for weeknights and casual gatherings alike. Bean and cheese enchiladas perfectly captured the 1970s spirit of creating flavorful, satisfying meals on a budget. They proved that with simple ingredients and a little love, you could make something hearty, nostalgic, and utterly delicious without meat. Vegetable stir-fry with rice. In the 1970s, as America's curiosity about global flavors blossomed, the humble vegetable stir-fry quietly made its mark. Easy, quick, colorful, and packed with flavor, this dish offered an economical way to enjoy fresh veggies in a way that felt new and exciting. It was a bright splash of health and zest on dinner plates, perfect for busy families who wanted something tasty without a fuss. The magic of vegetable stir-fry lies in its simplicity and speed. Crisp, fresh vegetables, think bell peppers in red, yellow, and green, crunchy carrots sliced thin, tender broccoli florets, sweet snap peas, and earthy mushrooms are tossed together in a hot pan or wok, sizzling with garlic and a splash of soy sauce. Each vegetable retains its vibrant color and natural crunch, making the dish as visually appealing as it is flavorful. Back then, soy sauce was becoming a kitchen staple, adding a salty, savory depth to dishes that Western palates were just beginning to embrace. Garlic and a pinch of sugar balanced the flavors, while a little oil helped everything glide together in the pan. pan. Sometimes, cooks would add a splash of rice vinegar or a sprinkle of ginger for an extra zing, depending on what was on hand. Rice, often plain white and fluffy, was the trusty base beneath this medley of vegetables. It was cheap, filling, and perfect for soaking up the flavorful juices from the stir-fry. Cooking the rice to fluffy perfection was an art in itself, neither mushy nor undercooked, and it acted like a warm bed for the vibrant veggies. The beauty of this meal was how customizable it was. No fancy ingredients were needed, just whatever fresh or frozen vegetables were affordable and available. It was a dish of resourcefulness, a way to make the most of seasonal produce and leftovers, turning them into something bright and nourishing in minutes. Vegetable stir-fry with rice was a glimpse of new culinary horizons for many in the 1970s, introducing bold flavors and quick cooking techniques from far-off places. Yet, it was still grounded in the era's practical needs, a budget-friendly, healthy, and colorful dinner that the whole family could enjoy without fuss. This simple stir-fry reminds us that sometimes the best meals come from fresh ingredients, a hot pan, and a little seasoning, bringing a taste of the world to the everyday kitchen. Macaroni and cheese. Few dishes capture the essence of 1970s comfort food quite like macaroni and cheese. It was the go-to meal for busy families, a childhood favorite, and a budget-friendly classic that warmed countless kitchens with its creamy, cheesy goodness. No matter the occasion, weeknight dinner, potluck, or leftover lunch, this dish delivered pure, simple satisfaction. Back in the day, the magic began with elbow macaroni, those little curved tubes that cooked quickly and held sauce perfectly in their hollow centers. The cheese sauce was often made from scratch using a simple roux. Butter melted and blended with flour to create a thick base, then milk stirred in slowly to build creamy richness. Sharp cheddar cheese, sometimes a mix of cheddar and American, was folded in until melted smooth and luscious. This homemade cheese sauce was a step up from boxed mixes, which were popular but lacked the fresh, velvety texture of a stove-made sauce. The balance of creamy sauce coating each macaroni bite was just right, not too runny, not too stiff. A sprinkle of mustard powder or a dash of nutmeg often added a subtle tang or warmth, secrets passed along from one cook to the next. Once the noodles and cheese sauce were combined, many home cooks poured the mixture into a baking dish, topping it with extra shredded cheese or breadcrumbs. Baking transformed the dish, creating a golden, bubbly crust that gave way to a gooey, velvety interior. This crisp top was the crowning glory, slightly crunchy, buttery, and full of cheesy aroma that made the whole kitchen smell like home. Macaroni and cheese was more than just a meal. It was nostalgia in a bowl, a symbol of comfort, love, and family traditions. It was inexpensive, easy to make, and endlessly adaptable. Add-ins like cooked broccoli, diced tomatoes, or even a sprinkle of hot sauce found their way into many variations. But at its core, it remained that perfect marriage of tender pasta and rich cheese sauce. For many in the 1970s, macaroni and cheese was a reassurance, a simple, reliable dish that turned ordinary ingredients into something extraordinary. It reminds us that sometimes the most satisfying meals come from the warmest memories and the simplest recipes. Baked potato with broccoli and cheese sauce. There was something wonderfully unpretentious about the baked potato in the 1970s kitchen, a humble tuber that could be dressed up or down and still feel like a satisfying meal. One of the era's favorite ways to elevate this simple staple was by topping it with tender steamed broccoli and a rich, creamy cheese sauce. This combination turned an everyday potato into a warm, filling, and comforting dinner that was both meatless and budget-friendly. The magic starts with the potato itself, baked until the skin is crisp and the inside soft and fluffy. Pierce it a few times, pop it into the oven, and let time work its slow, steady magic. Once done, the potato's interior is fluffed with a fork, ready to soak up the creamy topping. Broccoli, often steamed until just tender but still bright green, offers a fresh, slightly crunchy contrast to the soft potato. In the 1970s, frozen broccoli was a convenient pantry standby, making it easy to enjoy this vegetable any time of year. The star of the show, though, is the cheese sauce, a classic cheddar cheese sauce made by melting sharp cheddar into a buttery roux of flour and milk. The sauce is smooth and velvety, with a gentle tang that perfectly complements the earthiness of the potato and the mild bitterness of the broccoli. A pinch of mustard powder or a dash of nutmeg was sometimes added to deepen the flavor, subtle touches that many home cooks swore by. Once the broccoli is nestled atop the potato, the cheese sauce is ladled generously over the whole dish, pooling in the fluffy crevices and coating every bite. Some kitchens might sprinkle a little extra cheese on top before popping the potato briefly under the broiler to create a golden, bubbly crust. This meal is a perfect example of 1970s comfort food, straightforward, economical, and deeply satisfying. It's a plate full of texture and flavor contrasts. Crisp skin meets fluffy potato, tender broccoli, and silky sauce. that make each forkful a delight. Baked potatoes with broccoli and cheese sauce were more than just a cheap dinner. They were a way to celebrate simple ingredients and the creativity that turned them into something special. They remind us that wholesome meals don't have to be complicated or expensive. They just need a little love and good taste. Eggplant parmesan. Eggplant parmesan was a shining star of 1970s Italian-American cooking, a dish that brought rich, hearty flavors to the table without a shred of meat. It was comfort food with a splash of elegance, crispy, tender slices of eggplant layered with tangy tomato sauce and ooey-gooey cheese, baked until bubbling and golden. For many families, it was the kind of dish that turned a simple night into a special occasion, even on a budget. The journey begins with the eggplant itself, a vegetable that can be tricky but rewarding. Firm, glossy eggplants were sliced into thick rounds, then often salted and left to sweat for a bit, a time-honored trick to reduce bitterness and draw out excess moisture. After rinsing and patting dry, the slices were dipped in beaten egg and breadcrumbs, sometimes seasoned with garlic powder and Italian herbs, then fried or baked until crisp and golden. Next came the layering, a ritual almost as satisfying as the eating. A baking dish was spread with a layer of marinara, usually homemade or canned tomato sauce infused with garlic, onion, and fragrant basil. Then came the crispy eggplant slices, overlapping like cozy blankets, followed by generous spoonfuls of marinara, a sprinkle of shredded mozzarella, and a dusting of sharp Parmesan cheese. This layering continued until the dish was full, topped with a final blanket of cheese that would melt into a bubbly golden crust. Baking brought it all together, transforming the crispy edges, tangy sauce, and creamy cheese into a harmonious whole. The aroma wafting from the oven was a promise of comfort and warmth, a reminder of family dinners filled with laughter and stories. Eggplant parmesan from the 70s was about more than just flavor. It was a celebration of thrifty cooking and Italian-American heritage. It showed how meatless meals could be rich and indulgent, with textures that ranged from crisp to gooey, and flavors that were both bold and comforting. This dish remains a nostalgic favorite, proof that even simple vegetables, when treated with care and love, can create a feast worthy of any dinner table. Three-bean salad. If there was one dish that perfectly captured the spirit of summer potlucks and picnic tables in the 1970s, it was the three-bean salad. Cool, tangy, and just a little sweet, this salad was a trusty side or light meal that added a bright, refreshing note to any gathering. It was simple to make, inexpensive, and packed with a satisfying mix of textures and flavors that kept people coming back for seconds. The magic of this salad lies in the trio of beans, usually kidney beans, green beans, and wax beans. Each brings its own color and bite. The deep red kidney beans are tender and creamy. Green beans add a crisp snap, and wax beans contribute a buttery, pale contrast. These beans were often canned for convenience, rinsed and drained to keep the salad light and fresh. Onions, typically red or white, are thinly sliced to add a sharp, slightly pungent crunch that cuts through the beans' mildness. Sometimes, a sprinkle of celery seed or freshly cracked black pepper would add a little extra zing. The dressing is a simple vinaigrette made from vinegar, sugar, a bit of oil, and salt and pepper. The balance is key. Tangy enough to brighten the beans, with just enough sugar to mellow the acidity, and a touch of oil to round everything out. The salad is tossed thoroughly, then chilled for several hours, often overnight, so the flavors meld and deepen. The result is a cool, crisp dish that feels like a celebration of summer's bounty. Three-bean salad was a popular choice not only for its delicious flavor, but also for its ease and economy. It could be made in big batches, kept in the fridge for days, and served alongside anything from barbecue ribs to meatless casseroles. It was also a go-to for those seeking a light, satisfying vegetarian option at a time when plant-based meals were just starting to gain mainstream attention. More than just a salad, it was a symbol of shared meals and sunny afternoons, a dish that brought color and cheer to tables all across America. Even today, its bright flavors and simple goodness hold a timeless appeal. Quiche Lorraine, meatless version. Quiche Lorraine was a beloved staple of the 1970s dinner table, celebrated for its rich, creamy custard and flaky, buttery crust. Traditionally, this savory French tart featured bacon or ham, but the meatless version quickly won hearts in kitchens looking to stretch budgets or embrace the growing wave of vegetarian cooking. With spinach or mushrooms stepping in for the meat, this quiche became a luxurious yet approachable meal that offered both comfort and sophistication. Picture a golden pie crust, tender and flaky, cradling a silky filling made from eggs, cream, or whole milk, and a generous helping of cheese. The custard is smooth and rich, gently set, yet still just slightly wobbly in the center, a hallmark of perfectly baked quiche. The addition of sautéed spinach or earthy mushrooms adds both texture and a satisfying umami depth that rounds out the flavors beautifully. Making a quiche from scratch was a sign of care and homey elegance in the 1970s kitchen. The crust was usually a simple mixture of flour, butter, and a pinch of salt, rolled out thin, and fitted into a pie pan. Blind, baking the crust briefly before adding the filling helped keep it crisp and flaky even after the custard had set. Meanwhile, the vegetables were prepared. Spinach was quickly wilted in a pan, releasing its bright green color and mild sweetness, or mushrooms were sautéed until browned and fragrant, adding a rich, woodsy note. These cooked vegetables were mixed with shredded Swiss, cheddar, or Gruyere cheese, a melty, nutty addition that made every bite indulgent. The egg and cream mixture was seasoned with salt, pepper, and a pinch of nutmeg or fresh herbs like parsley or thyme, then poured over the vegetable cheese blend. The quiche baked in the oven at a moderate temperature, gently puffing up and turning golden around the edges, the custard setting just enough to slice cleanly but still feel creamy on the tongue. This meatless quiche was versatile, served hot or warm for dinner, or even cold for lunch or brunch. It often appeared alongside simple salads or steamed vegetables, completing a meal that was both satisfying and light on the wallet. The 1970s were a time when cooking reflected a mix of tradition and new ideas, and this quiche captured that perfectly. It bridged the gap between old-world charm and modern sensibility, showing that meatless meals could be elegant, filling, and full of flavor. Even now, the meatless quiche Lorraine remains a timeless dish, comforting yet sophisticated, simple yet impressive. It invites home cooks to slow down, roll out their dough, and savor the blend of creamy custard, tender greens, and melted cheese, just like kitchens did over 50 years ago. Vegetable soup with barley. In the chilly months of the 1970s, few meals warmed the body and soul quite like a big pot of vegetable soup with barley. It was the kind of dish that turned modest pantry staples into a thick, hearty stew, brimming with tender vegetables and the chewy, nutty bite of pearl barley. Meatless, frugal, and deeply nourishing, this soup was a go-to for families seeking comfort without fuss. The beauty of vegetable soup with barley lies in its simplicity and versatility. Root vegetables like carrots and celery provide a sweet, aromatic base, while potatoes add substance and creaminess as they cook down. Onions and garlic bring depth, and canned or fresh tomatoes lend a touch of brightness. The barley, those small, pearly grains, absorbs the broth as it simmers, swelling to tender chewiness and giving the soup a satisfying texture that feels like a meal in itself. Making this soup begins with sweating diced onions, carrots, and celery in a splash of oil or butter, coaxing out their natural sweetness. Garlic joins the mix next, releasing a fragrant warmth that fills the kitchen with cozy anticipation. Once the veggies are softened, vegetable broth or water is added, along with the barley and diced potatoes. The soup then simmers gently, allowing the barley to plump and the flavors to meld. Herbs such as bay leaves, thyme, and parsley, common pantry staples in the 70s kitchen, add an earthy herbal note. A touch of salt and pepper rounds out the flavor, while some cooks added a dash of tomato paste or Worcestershire sauce to deepen the richness. As the soup bubbles away, the barley swells, thickening the broth into a stew-like consistency. Vegetable soup with barley was more than just a filler. It was a nourishing bowl full of fiber, vitamins, and heartiness. Served with crusty bread or a simple salad, it made an affordable, warming meal for cold evenings, school lunches, or any time when a little comfort was needed. In the 1970s, this soup spoke to a time when meals were made to stretch and satisfy, using humble ingredients to their fullest. It reminds us that good food doesn't need to be fancy or complicated. Sometimes it's the slow simmering of simple things that creates the deepest satisfaction. Even today, this soup remains a timeless classic, proof that hearty, meatless meals can be wholesome, filling, and deeply comforting. It invites us to pause, ladle out a bowl, and enjoy a taste of the past, slow-cooked and seasoned with a little bit of love. Spinach and cheese stuffed shells. In the 1970s, Italian-American cooking brought a comforting and colorful touch to many kitchens, and few dishes were as lovingly crafted or satisfying as spinach and cheese stuffed shells. These jumbo pasta shells, filled with a creamy mixture of ricotta cheese and tender spinach, baked in a savory tomato sauce, became a go-to meatless meal for families wanting something both hearty and elegant without spending a fortune. The magic of stuffed shells lies in their delightful combination of textures and flavors. The pasta, cooked just right, soft yet firm enough to hold the filling, acts as a perfect little vessel. Inside, the ricotta cheese mixture is rich and creamy, flecked with chopped spinach that brings freshness and a mild earthiness. Parmesan cheese adds a sharp, nutty undertone, while mozzarella melts on top to create that irresistible golden, bubbly crust. Preparing the filling begins by cooking down fresh or frozen spinach until wilted and any excess moisture squeezed out to prevent sogginess. This spinach is folded into ricotta, along with beaten eggs to bind everything, grated Parmesan, and seasoning of salt, pepper, and a pinch of nutmeg for warmth. Some cooks also add a little garlic or onion powder for extra depth. Meanwhile, the jumbo shells are boiled until al dente, drained carefully, and cooled slightly to make stuffing easier. Each shell is gently filled with a generous scoop of the cheesy spinach mixture and placed snugly into a baking dish spread with a layer of marinara or tomato sauce. The sauce keeps the shells moist during baking and infuses them with bright, tangy flavor. Once all the shells are stuffed and arranged, more marinara sauce is poured over the top, followed by a blanket of shredded mozzarella. Baking the dish until the cheese melts and browns creates that classic, comforting aroma that fills the kitchen with anticipation. Spinach and cheese stuffed shells were more than just a casserole. They were a celebration of simple ingredients made special through care and time. They brought color, richness, and a touch of elegance to everyday meals, perfect for feeding families on a budget while pleasing even the pickiest eaters. This dish captures the spirit of 1970s home cooking, affordable, wholesome, and satisfying with a dash of Italian flair. It reminds us that meatless meals can be hearty and flavorful, worthy of a Sunday dinner or a cozy weeknight gathering. Even today, stuffed shells hold a special place at the table, a delicious bridge between nostalgia and timeless comfort food that invites everyone to gather, dig in, and savor. Potato pancakes, latkes. Crunchy on the outside, tender on the inside, potato pancakes, known to many as latkes, were a beloved meatless treat in the 1970s kitchen. Though deeply rooted in Jewish tradition, these golden discs of grated potato found their way onto tables across America, especially during colder months or holiday celebrations. They were inexpensive, simple to make, and offered a satisfying crispness that was hard to resist. The magic starts with humble potatoes, peeled and grated into fine strands. The grated potato is often mixed with finely chopped onions, adding a sweet bite and aroma that deepens as the pancakes fry. To bind the mixture together, eggs and a bit of flour or matzo meal are added, giving the latkes their perfect hold without heaviness. Salt and pepper season the batter, sometimes with a touch of garlic or herbs for those looking to add their own twist. Frying is key. The batter is spooned into hot oil, sizzling immediately as it hits the pan. Skilled cooks know the trick. Keep the oil hot enough to create a crisp, golden crust, but not so hot that the pancakes burn before cooking through. Each pancake fries until perfectly browned and crisp, then is drained on paper towels to shed any excess oil. In the 70s, potato pancakes were often served with applesauce or sour cream, sweet and tangy companions that balanced the savory, crispy cakes. They made for a wonderful breakfast, lunch, or side dish, and were a staple at holiday tables or Sunday brunches. What makes potato pancakes special isn't just the satisfying crunch or the comforting aroma. They're a reminder of resourcefulness and tradition. Potatoes were affordable and filling, and this simple preparation transformed them into something celebratory. They brought families together, whether during Hanukkah or a quiet weeknight, with their warm, golden presence. Even now, the humble latke holds its place as a beloved comfort food. Crispy, tender, and deeply nostalgic, potato pancakes remind us that sometimes the simplest ingredients and a little patience can create a dish that's more than just food. It's a memory, a tradition, and a delight. Vegetable shepherd's pie. Shepherd's pie has long been a comforting staple in many homes, and in the 1970s, the vegetable version gained popularity as a hearty, meatless way to fill plates without stretching the grocery budget. This dish, with its creamy mashed potato topping and savory vegetable filling, offered a warm embrace on chilly evenings, a true hug in a casserole dish. The heart of vegetable shepherd's pie is its rich, savory filling. Instead of ground meat, cooks turn to mushrooms, lentils, or beans to create a satisfying, protein-packed base. Mushrooms brought an earthy depth and meaty texture, while lentils or beans added wholesome bite and nutrition. Carrots, peas, onions, and sometimes corn rounded out the mix, adding sweetness and color. The filling is cooked slowly, often starting with sautéing onions and carrots until tender, then adding the mushrooms or lentils. A splash of vegetable broth or tomato paste helps create a thick, flavorful sauce that binds everything together. Herbs like thyme, rosemary, or parsley add warmth and aroma, while salt and pepper season to taste. The crowning glory is the mashed potato topping, a creamy, buttery layer spread generously over the vegetable mixture. Many home cooks whipped their potatoes with butter and milk, creating a fluffy, smooth texture that crisps beautifully in the oven's heat. Once assembled, the pie bakes until the mashed potatoes are golden and slightly crispy on top, with the filling bubbling gently underneath. The aroma wafting from the oven is a promise of comfort and satisfaction, inviting everyone to the table. Vegetable shepherd's pie was more than a meatless alternative. It was a celebration of home cooking and resourcefulness. It showed that you didn't need meat to create a meal that was filling, flavorful, and full of warmth. It was the kind of dish that left everyone feeling satisfied and cared for. Today, vegetable shepherd's pie continues to hold a special place on family tables, proving that hearty, meatless meals can be both nourishing and delicious. It's a timeless reminder that simple ingredients, combined with love and patience, can turn an ordinary meal into a cherished tradition. Cheese and spinach manicotti. Manicotti, those large tubular pasta shells, were a beloved feature on many 1970s dinner tables, offering a delicious and satisfying meatless meal that was perfect for family gatherings or cozy weeknights. Stuffed generously with creamy ricotta and fresh spinach, bathed in tangy tomato sauce, and topped with melted mozzarella, cheese and spinach manicotti captured the era's love for Italian-American comfort food made simple and affordable. Imagine the scene: a bubbling casserole dish fresh from the oven, the air filled with the warm aroma of melted cheese, garlic, and herbs. The manicotti tubes hold pockets of luscious filling, ricotta smooth and rich, brightened by tender cooked spinach. Each bite combines the hearty pasta with the creamy cheese and the fresh, earthy taste of spinach, all wrapped in a vibrant. The preparation starts with cooking the pasta tubes just until al dente, soft enough to fill but still firm enough to hold their shape during baking. Meanwhile, the filling is prepared by mixing ricotta cheese with cooked, finely chopped spinach. The spinach is usually sautéed lightly to release moisture, then drained well so the filling stays creamy rather than watery. Grated Parmesan or Romano cheese is stirred in for a salty, nutty depth, and a beaten egg is added to help bind the filling. Seasonings like garlic powder, salt, pepper, and a pinch of nutmeg add subtle layers of flavor. Once the filling is ready, each manicotti shell is carefully stuffed with a generous spoonful, filling the tubes to the brim, but not overflowing. The tubes are then arranged snugly in a baking dish coated with marinara or a simple tomato sauce made from canned tomatoes, onions, garlic, and Italian herbs like basil and oregano. The sauce is key. It keeps the pasta moist during baking and infuses the whole dish with tangy sweetness. A final blanket of shredded mozzarella cheese covers the top, melting into a bubbly, golden crust that's both inviting and indulgent. Baking the manicotti brings all the elements together. The cheese melts and browns, the sauce thickens slightly, and the pasta softens just enough to meld with the filling. The result is a comforting casserole that slices neatly and serves beautifully, offering layers of flavor and texture with every forkful. Cheese and spinach manicotti was a staple in 1970s home kitchens because it combined economy with elegance. The ingredients were affordable and accessible, yet the final dish felt special, something to be proud of on any table. It was a way for home cooks to stretch ingredients, feed families, and enjoy a meatless meal that never felt like a compromise. This dish also speaks to the era's embrace of Italian-American cuisine, which was becoming increasingly popular across the United States. It represented a blending of traditional flavors with practical cooking, using what was on hand to create something memorable. Today, cheese and spinach manicotti remains a favorite for those who love cozy, cheesy pasta dishes. It's a reminder that meatless doesn't have to mean simple or boring. Rather, with a little care and classic ingredients, it can be rich, satisfying, and deeply comforting. So next time you want to slow down and savor a meal, consider the humble manicotti, filled with creamy spinach and cheese, smothered in tomato sauce, and topped with golden mozzarella. It's a delicious slice of 1970s nostalgia, served warm and hearty, just like Grandma used to make. Cheese fondue.
It's especially popular during the cold season, and it does its main ingredient proud: the Swiss cheese fondue.
Few dishes capture the communal spirit and cozy warmth of the 1970s, quite like cheese fondue. This interactive meal, where diners dip crusty bread, vegetables, and even boiled potatoes into a bubbling pot of melted cheese, became the ultimate gathering food during that decade. It was social, fun, and surprisingly affordable, making it a beloved staple for family dinners, parties, and chilly winter evenings. Imagine a heavy cast iron or ceramic pot sitting in the center of the table, filled with a smooth, creamy blend of melted Swiss cheeses, fragrant with garlic, enlivened with a splash of dry white wine. The pot bubbles gently, coaxing everyone to grab their long forks and dip pieces of crusty bread, crisp broccoli, or tender boiled potatoes into the gooey cheese. It was a meal that encouraged conversation, laughter, and slow, shared enjoyment, a perfect antidote to the busy pace of life. The foundation of classic cheese fondue lies in the cheeses themselves, usually Gruyere and Emmental, both Swiss varieties prized for their nutty, mellow flavors and excellent melting qualities. These cheeses, shredded or cubed, are gently melted over low heat, often with a rubbed clove of garlic warming the pot first to add a subtle aromatic note. A key liquid ingredient is dry white wine, poured in slowly to loosen the cheese and add acidity, balancing the richness. Some recipes include a splash of kirsch, a clear cherry brandy, for a delicate fruitiness that lingers beneath the cheese's creamy surface. The wine also helps create that perfect smooth texture, preventing the cheese from becoming stringy or clumpy. To thicken and stabilize the mixture, a small amount of cornstarch or flour is usually mixed with the cheese or wine, helping to create a luscious, velvety sauce that clings just right to whatever you dip. Freshly ground black pepper and a pinch of nutmeg round out the flavor, adding warmth and subtle complexity. Once prepared, the fondue pot is kept warm on a small burner or candle at the table, ensuring the cheese stays melted and inviting. Diners spear their dipping items, chunks of rustic French bread with a sturdy crust, steamed broccoli florets, boiled baby potatoes, or even crisp apple slices, and swirl them slowly in the cheesy pool. Cheese fondue wasn't just a meal, it was an experience, a way to slow down and enjoy food and company together. In the 1970s, fondue parties became popular as a way to bring friends and family together around the table, sharing not just food but stories and laughter. It was elegant, yet unpretentious, affordable, yet indulgent. For many, fondue conjures memories of winter holidays, fireside gatherings, or that one special evening when the pot came out and everyone gathered close. It symbolized a joyful, communal way of eating, where the meal was as much about connection as it was about flavor. Even now, cheese fondue invites us to slow down, savor, and share. It reminds us that some of the best meals are those that bring people together, with simple ingredients transformed into something magical by heat, patience, and good company. So, whether you're dipping bread or veggies, cheese fondue offers a delicious trip back to the 1970s, a cozy, comforting classic that still warms hearts and fills stomachs with cheesy delight. Vegetarian Sloppy Joes. Sloppy Joes, the quintessential messy, saucy sandwich, held a special place on American tables throughout the 1970s. But for families embracing meatless meals or simply looking to save a few dollars, the vegetarian version became a beloved alternative that was just as hearty, flavorful, and finger-licking good. With lentils or textured vegetable protein standing in for ground beef, vegetarian Sloppy Joes offered all the tangy, savory satisfaction without the meat. Picture this: soft hamburger buns piled high with a rich, tomatoey, slightly sweet sauce that clings to tender lentils or textured veggie protein. The aroma of sautéed onions and bell peppers mingling with garlic and spices fills the kitchen, promising a meal that's filling, comforting, and, let's be honest, a little bit fun to eat. The base ingredient for these meatless Sloppy Joes is often cooked lentils, or TVP, textured vegetable protein, both affordable, shelf-stable options that pack protein and texture. Lentils, with their slightly nutty flavor and firm bite, mimic the texture of ground meat surprisingly well. TVP, a processed soy product, soaks up the sauce beautifully and adds a chewy, satisfying mouthfeel. The sauce itself is a harmonious blend of tomato sauce or ketchup, Worcestershire sauce, vegetarian versions are available, mustard, vinegar, and a touch of brown sugar or molasses for sweetness. Chili powder, smoked paprika, and black pepper add warmth and depth, while garlic and onions sautéed until soft bring savory richness. Some cooks would sneak in a dash of hot sauce or cayenne for a subtle kick. To make the dish, onions and bell peppers are softened in a skillet. Then the lentils or rehydrated TVP join the party, soaking up all the aromatic goodness. The tomato-based sauce is poured in, simmered gently to thicken and meld flavors. The end result is a thick, rich mixture that's hearty enough to stand up to a sturdy bun without falling apart. Once spooned onto toasted hamburger buns, the vegetarian Sloppy Joes are often served with classic sides, crispy pickles, coleslaw, or simple potato chips. The messier the better. Biting into one is a nostalgic experience, with sauce dripping and flavors bursting in every mouthful. This meatless take on a classic American sandwich spoke volumes about the 1970s, a decade of experimentation in the kitchen where people explored new diets, environmental awareness, and budget-friendly meals. It was a way to enjoy familiar comfort food with a twist, proving that meatless doesn't mean missing out on flavor or fun. Vegetarian Sloppy Joes were a hit for families, college students, and anyone wanting a quick, satisfying meal without complicated ingredients. They made great leftovers, reheating beautifully for lunches or second dinners, and like many dishes from that era, they reflected a spirit of creativity and thrift, making the most of pantry staples without sacrificing taste. Today, vegetarian Sloppy Joes continue to be a crowd pleaser for meatless eaters and adventurous cooks alike. They remind us that with the right combination of ingredients and a bit of love, A classic comfort food can be reinvented into something wholesome, affordable, and utterly delicious. So next time you want a sandwich that's juicy, tangy, and full of nostalgic flavor, give vegetarian sloppy joes a try. They're a messy, saucy celebration of the 1970s spirit, simple, satisfying, and made for sharing. Broccoli and cheddar soup.
Hey, I'm John Cannell, and today on Preppy Kitchen we're making a creamy, delicious broccoli cheese soup. So let's get started.
Few dishes wrapped up warmth and comfort quite like broccoli and cheddar soup in the 1970s. Thick, creamy, and packed with tender broccoli florets and sharp, melty cheddar cheese, this soup was a staple in kitchens across America, especially when the weather turned cold and the desire for hearty, simple meals grew strong. It was a meatless meal that felt indulgent without being complicated or costly. A perfect example of humble ingredients turned into something special. The story begins with fresh or frozen broccoli, steamed or simmered just until tender but still bright green, keeping a little bite to contrast the creamy base. The soup's heart is a smooth cheese sauce, made by first creating a roux, a classic blend of butter and flour cooked gently until bubbly and fragrant. Slowly whisking in milk or cream transforms the roux into a velvety white sauce, which becomes the canvas for sharp cheddar cheese to melt luxuriously. Sharp cheddar was the cheese of choice, prized for its rich flavor and excellent melting quality. Adding it slowly and stirring carefully ensured a smooth, creamy texture without graininess. Some cooks added a pinch of dry mustard or a dash of cayenne pepper to brighten the flavor and give the soup a subtle kick. Onions and garlic sautéed in butter provided a savory foundation, while a little flour added to the sautéed aromatics helped thicken the soup further. The broccoli was then folded into this cheesy broth, sometimes with a few chopped stems for added texture and earthiness. The soup was often pureed lightly or left chunky, depending on preference, making it a versatile favorite. One of the beauties of broccoli and cheddar soup was how economical it was. Using frozen broccoli was common and helped stretch budgets without sacrificing flavor or nutrition. The cheese, while indulgent, was used sparingly and wisely to make every bite count. Served steaming hot in a bowl, often with crusty bread or oyster crackers on the side, this soup became a satisfying lunch or dinner, especially during cold seasons. Its creamy richness and vibrant green flecks made it a dish that felt like a warm hug. Broccoli and cheddar soup was also a crowd pleaser for families, easy to prepare in large batches and perfect for reheating. It brought simple, wholesome ingredients together in a way that felt special without being fussy. In the context of the 1970s, this soup reflected the era's growing interest in comfort foods that could be made quickly and affordably at home. It wasn't fancy, but it was nourishing, filling, and utterly satisfying, a bowl full of cozy that needed no meat to shine. Today, broccoli and cheddar soup remains a beloved classic, reminding us that sometimes the best meals come from the simplest ingredients, lovingly prepared. It's a testament to how food can warm not just the body but also the heart, bringing a little nostalgia and a lot of comfort to every spoonful. Pasta Primavera.
Hey, I'm John Cannell, and today on Preppy Kitchen we're making a fresh and delicious pasta primavera. So let's get started.
Pasta Primavera might have been considered a bit fancy or trendy when it first appeared on the American dining scene in the 1970s, but at its heart, it was a celebration of spring's freshest vegetables tossed with tender pasta and a sprinkle of cheese. For many home cooks, it was a bright, cheerful dish, a light yet satisfying meatless meal that felt like a breath of fresh air after the heavy casseroles and rich stews common in earlier decades. The name Primavera, meaning spring in Italian, was fitting. This dish embraced the season's bounty with a colorful mix of fresh vegetables, cooked just so to keep their crunch and vibrant hues. Zucchini sliced thin, tender asparagus tips, sweet bell peppers, cherry tomatoes bursting with juice, fresh peas, and sometimes baby spinach all found their way into the pan. The combination was a feast for the eyes as much as the palate, with bright greens, reds, yellows, and purples swirling together in a joyful dance. Making pasta primavera began with cooking the pasta, often linguine, spaghetti, or penne, to a perfect al dente. The pasta served as the comforting, familiar base that would carry the vegetables and light sauce. Meanwhile, the vegetables were sautéed quickly over high heat in olive oil or butter, just enough to soften them without losing their fresh bite and brilliant color. Garlic, always a kitchen hero, was gently browned to release its fragrant aroma, while a squeeze of fresh lemon juice brightened the whole dish with a tangy pop. Sometimes, a sprinkle of red pepper flakes added a gentle heat, keeping things lively but not overwhelming. Fresh herbs like basil, parsley, or thyme were stirred in at the end, lending their fragrant green notes. The sauce was light and simple. No heavy creams here. Just a splash of pasta cooking water to bring everything together, a drizzle of olive oil, and a handful of freshly grated Parmesan cheese to add richness and a touch of salty tang. This kept the dish fresh, clean, and light on the stomach, a perfect antidote to the often heavier meatless meals of the era. Pasta Primavera was a reflection of the 1970s growing fascination with healthier eating and international flavors. The influx of Italian-American cuisine into mainstream culture brought new inspiration to home cooks, encouraging them to experiment with fresh produce and simple cooking techniques. It was also a dish that fit beautifully into the decade's rising interest in vegetarianism and whole foods, showing that meatless meals could be colorful, lively, and full of flavor. What made Pasta Primavera so enduringly popular was its versatility. It could be dressed up or down, depending on what was in the pantry or garden. Early spring meant asparagus and peas. Summer brought ripe tomatoes and zucchini. Bell peppers brightened late summer and fall. The dish could be served warm or at room temperature, making it ideal for casual dinners or potlucks. For families on a budget, Pasta Primavera was a way to enjoy the taste of fresh vegetables without fuss or expense. It was quick to prepare, required minimal ingredients, and celebrated the flavors of the season in a way that felt both comforting and exciting. Even today, Pasta Primavera holds a special place in the pantheon of meatless meals. It reminds us that the simplest ingredients, fresh vegetables, pasta, a bit of cheese, can come together to create something vibrant and memorable. It's a dish that honors the past while embracing the present, inviting cooks to slow down, savor the seasons, and enjoy the beauty of food made with care. So the next time you want to brighten your dinner table with a meal that's light, flavorful, and full of nostalgic charm, consider Pasta Primavera, a delicious, colorful tribute to the spirit of the 1970s and the timeless joy of fresh, simple cooking. Black bean burgers.
We're making our top-rated black bean veggie burgers. These are better than anything you get in the freezer section and a whole lot easier on your wallet.
The 1970s were a time of culinary exploration and shifting food values. As people became more conscious about health, the environment, and the rising costs of meat, inventive cooks looked for ways to create satisfying, hearty meals without relying on the usual ground beef patties. Black bean burgers emerged as a delicious, affordable, and nutritious meatless alternative, a way to enjoy all the fun of a burger without the meat. And while today's black bean burger craze is often linked to modern food trends, the roots of this humble patty stretch back decades. Imagine a skillet warming on the stove, the faint sizzle of oil, and the smell of sautéed onions and garlic mingling with earthy black beans and fragrant spices. These burgers were packed with flavor and texture, a crisp outer crust formed in the pan, giving way to a soft, moist interior that held together just enough for grilling or frying. They were messy, satisfying, and perfect, piled high on a soft bun with all the classic fixings: lettuce, tomato, pickles, and a swipe of ketchup or mustard. The base ingredient was simple and budget-friendly: canned or cooked black beans. These small legumes brought a rich, earthy flavor and a creamy texture when mashed just right. Black beans also offered protein and fiber, making the burgers filling and nutritious, a serious contender against traditional meat patties. To bind the beans and create a burger-like consistency, cooks added breadcrumbs or crushed crackers, along with an egg or a flaxseed egg for the vegetarians. The goal was to have a patty firm enough to hold together, but tender enough to bite into. Onions and garlic were sautéed until soft and sweet, then folded into the bean mixture, along with seasonings like cumin, chili powder, salt, and pepper, flavors that brought warmth and a hint of smoky depth. Some cooks added fresh herbs or a dash of hot sauce to brighten things up, while others included finely chopped bell peppers or shredded carrots for added texture and color. Once mixed, the bean mixture was shaped into patties, usually hand-formed with a bit of rustic charm, and left to chill briefly in the fridge, helping them firm up before cooking. Cooking was often done in a lightly oiled skillet over medium heat, where the patties would sizzle and brown, developing a crispy crust while staying tender inside. Some adventurous cooks grilled them outdoors, enjoying the smoky aroma mingling with the summer air. These black bean burgers were typically served on hamburger buns, toasted lightly for extra texture. Traditional toppings, crisp lettuce, juicy tomato slices, crunchy pickles, and onions added freshness and crunch. Condiments like ketchup, mustard, or mayonnaise rounded out the flavors, and sometimes a slice of cheddar or Monterey Jack cheese melted atop the patty made the dish feel even more indulgent. What made black bean burgers truly special in the 1970s wasn't just their taste or texture, it was what they represented. They were a symbol of shifting attitudes toward food, reflecting the era's growing interest in vegetarianism, health, and environmental consciousness. Black bean burgers made meatless meals approachable and fun, especially for families wanting to reduce meat consumption without sacrificing familiar favorites. This dish was also a testament to creativity and thriftiness. Black beans were inexpensive and widely available, making the burgers a practical solution for feeding families on a budget. The recipe could be adapted to whatever spices or vegetables were on hand, turning pantry staples into a satisfying meal. Leftovers were a blessing. These patties reheated well and could be eaten cold or warmed up for quick lunches or snacks. They fit perfectly into the 1970s lifestyle, where homemade, hearty meals were valued, but time and money could be tight. The legacy of the black bean burger is still felt today. It paved the way for the plant-based burger boom, showing that meatless patties could be delicious, filling, and beloved by all ages. But it's also a reminder that many new food trends have deep roots, born out of necessity, creativity, and a desire to nourish both body and soul. Making black bean burgers from scratch offers a rewarding, hands-on experience. From mashing the beans and stirring in aromatic ingredients to shaping and frying the patties, the process feels like a labor of love, one that results in a meal both comforting and proud. Whether served for a casual weeknight dinner or a backyard cookout, black bean burgers invite you to savor a taste of the past with every bite. They are a delicious reminder that simple ingredients, treated with care and imagination, can create something truly memorable and satisfying. Vegetable pot pie. When you think of comfort food in the 1970s, few dishes embody home-cooked warmth and wholesome satisfaction like vegetable pot pie. This hearty, flaky crusted pie was the kind of meal that filled kitchens with a savory aroma, evoking memories of family dinners where everyone gathered around the table, ready to dig into something filling, flavorful, and lovingly made. It was a meatless meal that didn't feel like a sacrifice. Instead, it celebrated the bounty of garden-fresh and pantry staples in a rich, creamy sauce encased in golden pastry. The charm of a vegetable pot pie lies in its layers, tender vegetables bathed in a luscious, thickened sauce, all snug beneath a flaky, buttery crust that bakes to a perfect golden brown. It's a dish that speaks of resourcefulness and comfort, turning simple, affordable ingredients into something truly special. The filling starts with a medley of vegetables, often including peas, carrots, potatoes, celery, and sometimes mushrooms or green beans, depending on the season and what was available. These vegetables were either fresh or frozen, with frozen peas and carrots being common pantry staples in the 70s, prized for their convenience and flavor. To create the rich, creamy filling, cooks began by sautéing onions and celery in butter until softened and fragrant, building the flavor base. Flour was then sprinkled in to form a roux, a thickening agent, before slowly whisking in milk or vegetable broth to make a velvety white sauce. This sauce was seasoned simply with salt, pepper, and often a hint of thyme or parsley, herbs that added an earthy brightness and depth without overpowering the gentle flavors of the vegetables. Once the sauce reached the perfect thickness, the cooked vegetables were folded in, creating a luscious, hearty mixture that could hold its own under the pastry crust. The filling was the star, rich and creamy, but packed with the fresh, wholesome taste of vegetables, a meatless centerpiece that felt indulgent and satisfying. The crust was equally important. Many home cooks in the 1970s made their own pie dough from scratch, a simple combination of flour, cold butter or shortening, a pinch of salt, and cold water. The dough was rolled out to just the right thickness, thin enough to be tender and flaky, but sturdy enough to hold the filling without sogginess. Some cooks used two crusts, covering the entire pie, while others preferred a single top crust, sealing the edges carefully to trap in the steam and flavor. Once assembled, the pie was brushed with a little beaten egg or milk to promote a beautiful golden finish, then baked in a moderate oven until the crust was crisp, flaky, and deeply browned. The smell that wafted through the kitchen was irresistible. Warm butter, rich pastry, and that unmistakable scent of cooked vegetables and herbs. Vegetable pot pie was a meal of contrasts, creamy filling against crisp crust, tender veggies against flaky pastry, mild sweetness from carrots against savory herbs. Each bite offered comfort and satisfaction, a reminder of the simple pleasures of home-cooked food. In the 1970s, this dish was more than just a way to eat vegetables. It was a celebration of cooking with what you had, turning affordable ingredients into something memorable and nourishing. Pot pie made leftover vegetables feel special, and with a little prep ahead, it fed families for multiple meals. Today, vegetable pot pie remains a beloved classic, a testament to the timeless appeal of comfort food that is wholesome, hearty, and deeply satisfying. It invites home cooks to slow down, roll out some dough, and savor a meal that's as much about love and tradition as it is about flavor. So next time you want to bring a little warmth and nostalgia to your dinner table, consider vegetable pot pie, a golden, flaky, creamy celebration of vegetables, thrift, and timeless comfort. Chickpea curry. The 1970s marked a turning point in American kitchens as the country's growing fascination with international flavors and vegetarian meals converged in dishes like chickpea curry. Inspired by Indian cooking and the burgeoning interest in spices in global cuisines, chickpea curry became a beloved meatless meal that was hearty, flavorful, and full of warmth. It was an affordable way to enjoy exotic tastes at home, and a dish that still carries the echoes of family dinners filled with aromatic spices and shared stories. Imagine a pot simmering gently on the stove, releasing layers of fragrance,
Give a
earthy
stir
cumin,
and then cover
warm
it on
turmeric,
medium heat
fiery
for
chili,
5
and
minutes.
sweet cinnamon, all mingling with tender chickpeas and rich tomatoes to create a stew that feels both exotic and comforting. The thick, spiced sauce coats each bite of chickpeas, turning simple legumes into a meal worthy of celebration. Chickpeas, also known as garbanzo beans, have been a staple of Middle Eastern and South Asian diets for millennia, prized for their protein content, creamy texture, and versatility. In the 1970s, American kitchen, canned chickpeas were often the starting point, convenient and affordable, but many cooks who planned ahead preferred to soak and simmer dried chickpeas, yielding a fresher, more tender result. The curry's foundation begins with onions sautéed in oil until golden and soft, releasing their natural sweetness. Garlic and fresh ginger, essential aromatics in Indian cooking, join next, their pungent, spicy notes deepening the flavor. A careful blend of spices is then added, often starting with cumin seeds toasted in the pan to awaken their aroma. Ground turmeric lends a golden hue and mild earthiness, while coriander powder adds citrusy brightness. Garam masala, a fragrant spice blend typical of Indian kitchens, introduces complexity with hints of cinnamon, cloves, cardamom, and pepper. Red chili powder or cayenne is added sparingly, giving the curry a gentle heat that lingers. Tomatoes, either fresh, canned, or a combination, are cooked down until soft and saucy, forming the heart of the curry's rich base. Some cooks add a splash of water or vegetable broth to create just the right consistency, thick enough to cling to the chickpeas but loose enough to be spooned over rice or bread. Once the sauce is fragrant and simmering, the chickpeas go in, absorbing the spices and melding into the curry. Some home cooks stir in a dollop of yogurt or coconut milk at the end, smoothing out the sauce and adding a touch of creaminess that balances the spices beautifully. Fresh cilantro sprinkled on top adds a bright herbal finish. Chickpea curry was often served with steamed basmati rice, a fragrant, fluffy companion that soaked up every drop of sauce. In many 1970s households, warm flatbreads like naan or chapati were also served alongside, perfect for scooping up curry and creating an interactive, satisfying meal. The appeal of chickpea curry went beyond flavor. It reflected the era's spirit of experimentation, openness, and frugality. Spices that were once exotic were becoming staples in American pantries, thanks in part to the rise of health food stores and international markets. Vegetarianism was gaining traction, and dishes like chickpea curry showed how plant-based meals could be both nourishing and exciting. Making chickpea curry from scratch was an act of care and creativity. It invited home cooks to slow down and embrace the ritual of building flavors, tasting, adjusting, and blending spices with confidence. The curry was often made in larger batches, reheating beautifully and even improving in flavor over time, making it ideal for busy families or those looking to cook once and enjoy several meals. This dish also spoke to the importance of balance in cooking, between heat and creaminess, acidity and sweetness, earthiness and brightness. It celebrated humble ingredients elevated by spice and patience, proving that a meal doesn't need meat to feel satisfying and complete. Chickpea curry's influence extended beyond the kitchen. It represented a connection to global cultures, a bridge between traditions, and a way to explore new culinary landscapes without leaving home. For many, the dish sparked curiosity about Indian cuisine and inspired further adventures in spice blends and vegetarian cooking. Even today, chickpea curry remains a beloved comfort food and a symbol of the rich, diverse flavors that can be achieved with simple, wholesome ingredients. It reminds us that food is not just nourishment, it's culture, history, and a shared experience. If you want to bring a little 1970s international flair into your kitchen, try making chickpea curry. Start with fragrant spices, simmer tender chickpeas in a richly seasoned tomato base, and finish with creamy yogurt or coconut milk. Serve it with rice or warm bread, and enjoy a meal that's hearty, wholesome, and bursting with nostalgic flavor. Baked ziti with ricotta. Baked ziti was a beloved casserole of the 1970s, a dish that perfectly combined affordability, ease, and comforting Italian-American flavors in one bubbling, cheesy pan. For many families, it was a go-to meatless meal that felt hearty enough to satisfy hungry appetites without relying on expensive cuts of meat. Creamy ricotta cheese, tender pasta, and tangy marinara sauce came together in a dish that warmed kitchens and hearts alike. At its core, baked ziti is simple. Tubular pasta called ziti, sometimes replaced by penne, cooked until just tender, then layered or mixed with a luscious blend of cheeses and tomato sauce, baked until the top is golden and bubbly. It's the kind of dish that feeds a crowd, makes excellent leftovers, and fills the home with an irresistible aroma. The ricotta cheese plays a starring role in this dish, lending a creamy, slightly sweet richness that balances the acidity of the tomato sauce. In the 1970s, ricotta was often found in Italian-American households, either bought fresh from specialty stores or made at home. This cheese mixture might be stirred with beaten eggs, parsley, and a bit of grated Parmesan to add flavor and help it set up during baking. The sauce itself was usually a simple marinara made from canned tomatoes, garlic, onions, and Italian herbs like basil and oregano. Many home cooks had their own treasured recipes passed down through generations, but even the canned variety of the era brought comforting familiarity. The sauce's bright tomato tang was the perfect foil for the creamy cheeses. Once the pasta was cooked and drained, it was combined with the ricotta mixture and tomato sauce, sometimes layered in a casserole dish with shredded mozzarella cheese between layers for extra gooiness. The whole ensemble was then topped generously with mozzarella and Parmesan before heading into the oven. Baking the ziti created that wonderful contrast that made it such a crowd pleaser. A crisp, golden crust of melted cheese and toasted edges, giving way to a creamy, cheesy interior where pasta, sauce, and ricotta melded into a harmonious whole. The bubbling cheese on top was like a promise of comfort and warmth with every spoonful. Baked ziti was popular not only for its flavor, but also for its practicality. It could be prepared ahead of time, making it perfect for busy families or potlucks. The dish stretched well, feeding many mouths without demanding expensive ingredients or hours in the kitchen. It also fit neatly into the 1970s culinary landscape, where Italian-American dishes were increasingly mainstream, reflecting a growing appreciation for ethnic foods and home-style cooking. Baked ziti was a celebration of simple, hearty ingredients made special through tradition and care. Even today, baked ziti remains a nostalgic favorite. It reminds us that sometimes the best meals come from humble components: pasta, cheese, and sauce, combined with love and patience. It's a dish that invites sharing, slows the pace of the day, and comforts both body and soul. So next time you want a filling, satisfying, and timeless meal, consider baked ziti with ricotta. It's a delicious slice of 1970s comfort food that continues to bring people together around the dinner table. Creamed spinach on toast. Simple, humble, and surprisingly elegant. Creamed spinach on toast was a classic 1970s meatless meal that combined creamy richness with the satisfying crunch of toasted bread. It was an easy way to dress up spinach, turning it into a comforting dish that felt both nourishing and a little special. The preparation started with fresh or frozen spinach cooked down until tender, then stirred into a creamy white sauce made from butter, flour, and milk, essentially a basic bechamel. Sharp cheddar or Parmesan cheese often joined the mix, melting into the sauce to add depth and a tangy finish. A pinch of nutmeg and a dash of salt and pepper rounded out the flavors, giving the spinach a warm, cozy note. Thick slices of bread were toasted until golden and crisp, ready to hold the luscious creamed spinach. The warm, velvety spinach was spooned generously over the toast, sometimes finished with an extra sprinkle of cheese or freshly cracked pepper. This dish was a quick, affordable way to enjoy vegetables, perfect for a light lunch or side. It reminds us that comfort food doesn't have to be complicated. Sometimes, all you need is creamy spinach and crispy toast to make a meal that feels like a warm embrace. As we close this chapter on 25 humble meatless meals from the 1970s, it's clear that these dishes were about so much more than just saving a few cents at the grocery store. They were born out of a time when families gathered around the dinner table with gratitude for what they had, making do with simple ingredients and a pinch of imagination. These meals remind us that comfort doesn't have to come wrapped in expensive packaging or fancy restaurant fare. It can come from the bubbling pot of beans on the stove, the golden crust of a baked casserole, or the sweet surprise of marshmallows melting on a humble sweet potato. What's truly remarkable is how these recipes, crafted from thrift and resourcefulness, still hold their place in our hearts and kitchens today. They speak to a kind of warmth that transcends decades, an honest, unpretentious nourishment that filled bellies and brought families together through tough times and times of plenty alike. In an age where fast food and elaborate meals often steal the spotlight, these dishes offer a welcome return to the basics, to cooking with what's on hand and savoring every bite. So next time you're wondering what to cook, consider reaching back to these affordable, meatless classics. Let the smell of simmering lentils or roasting peppers transport you to a kitchen where the clatter of pots and the hum of conversation were just as important as the food itself. After all, food is never just about hunger. It's about history, tradition, and the simple joy of sharing a meal. And thanks for joining me on this delicious trip down memory lane. Here's to cooking cheap, cooking kind, and always finding satisfaction in the simplest dishes.